Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another chat with your favorite Nordic CEOs. I'm your host, Matt C. Smith, and today I'm joined by a CEO who's got a really interesting story to share with you about how you can never lose face, or how you should never lose face, and finding your safe spot in life. Randy Mariama, she's worked with Nordea for many years, actually. Formerly the CEO of Nordea Life and Pensions, which I was quite intrigued to know that it manages 450 billion NOK in assets within pension assets in the Nordics. I think it's the third largest player in that space. And more recently, she's the head of personal banking in Norway and country senior executive. Randy, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's a beautiful morning as well to have this show. I mean, we're coming into Christmas. I know many of you will probably listen to this in the new year. So let me wish you all a Merry Christmas. Hope you have a wonderful Christmas. But first and foremost, Randy, what do you have for breakfast?
Well, usually I don't have any breakfast. That's the honest answer.
You're one of them.
Yeah, I'm one of them. I'm a B person. Do you call it that in English? I love to sleep in. So I can have a tendency to wake up half an hour before a meeting, or maybe yesterday was 10 minutes before a meeting. So, it's really, really bad. And it's getting worse now at the home office. But when I eventually get to breakfast, it's the typical British breakfast. I love a Earl Grey with milk in, and then toast with the marmalade. That's my favorite.
Oh, yeah. That sounds delicious. Yes. I mean, it was a throwback to my past growing up in London, actually.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're very similar to Daniel, the CEO of Ubos as well. He said he's not much of a morning person. he's the guy who wakes up 3 minutes before a meeting, quickly, splashes water at his face, and everyone thinks he's been there since the morning.
Yeah, I need my contact lenses. That's the only thing, that's taking the 5 minutes.
Yeah. But do you have any morning routines? Because, I think it's interesting to know from CEOs such as yourself and others, we've always grown up with this rhetoric that CEOs are these, rise at 5 a.m., work till 4 a.m., sleep 1 hour, and look fresh as a daisy. Are there any morning routines that you sort of have to live by?
Well, since, it's 10 minutes before my meeting, it's not very much room for that. No, it's not 10 minutes, but half an hour or 3/4. No, not many morning routines. I'm more a late night person. I can, my favorite time to think and work is probably around 12 in the evening. So I haven't got that good fresh run which someone have, in the morning. No, I tried that. I put that up as a goal for myself, actually, but I didn't carry it through. It's too dark, so no. That's usually I do running in the afternoon rather.
So you're a runner, and that's good to know. Yeah, because I mean, exercise is a running thread. Sigve Brekke, for example, he's a morning exercise guy. So is Trine Strømnes from Cisco, episode coming soon.
Don't put the pressure on me. Oh, but it's too early. So I need, I need to wake up slowly and then get going.
And then tackle your day. I like that.
Yeah.
So. Randy, you think about your past, right? Obviously this show, we like to talk to CEOs of yourselves and learn a little bit more about their past. How did they grow up? Were they born into an environment that made them destined to be who they are today? If I asked you 20 years ago or your friends, would they have said, yep, that's going to be Randy. She's going to be, CEO of Nordea Life and Pensions. Because you grew up in a somewhat of a male-dominated environment. 3 older brothers.
Yeah.
Mother was a teacher. Father was a CEO of Ericsson, actually, yes. The Swedish telecommunication company, right? And fast forward a couple of years to you were 15. You spent a year in France. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. As I say, I had 3 elder brothers that was constantly saying that I was the spoiled one because I was the latest and a girl. But I don't think so. But because when I was 15, my mother was probably the one who has influenced me the most, driving me to be curious, to challenge myself. I was quite timid. As a youth, I was not part of the popular gang. I was very timid. And then when I was 15, my parents decided to move to the UK. And my brothers have moved out more or less. So they said, well, I think it's time that you move out, Randy. You should go to France. Good luck with
They
that.
kicked you out at 14, 15 years old.
Yes,
They kicked you out.
Yes. And you don't really speak that much French after just a few school years of that. So the vocabulary was quite poor. But so I ended up in boarding school in Poitiers in the west coast of France for a year.
Wow.
Pretty tough. And, the teachers in France, they wear the white coats. They are standing a bit above the students. They are really professors. And you get back these papers where everything is red because you done everything wrong. So it wasn't really a boost to my self-confidence. But I managed, and probably that's what I learned. And probably that's what my mother also wanted me to learn, that, you can do anything you want if you just dare to do it. You often land on your 2 feet.
Because I think that's something that we often get told that to progress in life, to level up, you need to change your environment. You need to challenge yourself,
yes.
right? Obviously, that one was forced challenge,
yeah.
which is harder to overcome than a selective challenge.
But I also think this was a challenge to my father, because when I was 16, I moved to the UK where they lived. And, I had my first boyfriend that was French, of course, when I was 15.
Oh, wow.
And my father didn't approve of that. So it was a bit back to them as well, coming to the UK and having lived a full year on my own, and then having had a French boyfriend, my father was a bit scared. So he started following me in every discotheque and every place to keep me safe. So it was also a challenge for them to see how fast I grew on that year, and recognize that I actually had managed to stand on my own 2 feet and didn't need them in the same way as before.
How important do you think that is? I went to boarding school, right? It was a British boarding school, so we had a lot of foreign kids. I love that because I was exposed to French, German, Russian, all kinds of Asia, from mainland China to Hong Kong, you name it. And I love that experience, right? Because I was exposed to so many different cultures. And I think boarding school obviously is, it's an old school thing, of course. Would you have you sent your children to such schools?
No, I haven't. I wouldn't have the heart to do it. But I have actually, I have talked about my experience and how I appreciate it. At least looking back, how that really built my confidence. And later on as well, when I have moved abroad and done different things, I've always had the thinking that you can do this. You will always land on your 2 feet. So it's been a really good experience for me, and I have also at least put it forward as an idea, but I haven't pushed my children, and they are doing great in their own ways. So they shouldn't follow my path, but they should be exposed to opportunities and always probably what I try to do in a soft way is to challenge them, as my mother did, with a warm heart, but still make sure that they get the best out of life.
That's very well said. Challenge them, be their friend, but obviously also a bit of an advocate to direct them in a way that is challenging. In terms of challenging experiences for yourself, so you've obviously had several in your early career, in your early life, your school career, in the UK, coming back to Norway, going to NHH, I think it was, Norwegian School of Economics. What was your first job out of school? Did you always have an idea that you wanted to work in finance, or which path did you take?
No, it was very coincidence that I landed up in finance. I joined the consultancy firm called PA Consulting. So when I went out of NHH, every one of us chose a consultancy firm. It was that time, that was very popular, management consultancy. And I ended up with PA because of the people that I met there. So, and I think that has been maybe, that has been important for me in every move I've made. The people that I am to work for or work with, that I get a connection, but also that I see something that I can learn, and also that the core values are at least in line with mine. And I liked PA Consulting Group because they both work with strategy and implementation. And I enjoy making the strategy, making the decisions, material, and also taking the decisions. But I also love to see it actually happen, to have some impact, because that's when it really matters. So I was 8 years in PA. I did different things, everything from leadership program for Norske Skog, a global company, to telecom, to finance. So very different industries and different companies and different problems to solve.
In terms of your career progression, I once was told this actually by one of my mentors, pretty much my number one mentor actually, Andy Chen, former CEO of Tidal. Shout out to you, Andy, if you're listening. Thanks for all your support, mate. Friend first, mentor second. He once said to me that your 20s are, and this is obviously perfectly timed for your 20s, I think you spent 8 years there, they're for you to build a network. And, it's all about discovering what you're best at in your 20s. So your 20s are almost a playground, a free, a hall pass to just go and try different things, meet as many people as possible, because your 30s is when you should start to go, okay, I think I know what I'm good at now, and I think I know what I'm not good at, which is actually even more important to know, so you don't repeat the things that you're bad at, all the things you don't enjoy, and then capitalize on that network, on those connections, on those friends that you've made in your 20s. So what was the most important lessons that you sort of developed during those first 8 years in management consulting?
Well, for one, it was the ability to grasp a problem or a material or a subject very quickly, to go quickly down into the details, to get the knowledge, and then to take the elevator up again and say, these are the key problems or issues or drivers in this industry that we need to tackle. So having the ability to go into new areas very, very quickly and understand the drivers, and then also to set the direction. That was probably the key thing, and which I have, learned to utilize very much as a leader afterwards. And then, as you say, secondly, is how you make things happen. So taking decisions is not, the world is not hierarchical. So it's not so you go to your boss and then he takes or she takes a decision and then it's done. It's very, very much about stakeholder management. Who are the really decision makers out there? How do you impact people so that you get the ball rolling? How do you get the... how do you activate people, engage people? What is motivating people to understand that? And I think, as you say, when you are in consultancy and in different industries, and also I was half a year in Brussels, traveling a bit around, you start to learn that, what are the key drivers for people?
What are the key drivers of people?
Well, it varies, of course, but how do you then read people to understand what are actually the key drivers? So, for instance, when I joined Nordea and a few years into that career, I was the regional head for the private side in Oslo, which is the biggest region we have. And it was typically there two types of colleagues. There was the one who's really, taking care of the private economy of the family, the caring part, that, the passion for banking in its true form, which was the motivation. And then you had the what we call the hunters, the people that are very much performance driven, very much looking for the numbers, So you had to speak a language where you could touch both those types of drivers, which is very much the combination when you meet people in finance, because you have the performance, but you also have the passion for why we are really here, the purpose of banking.
Because banking, and coming full circle to sort of your upbringing, as you said, having a protected environment from your father, being protective, your older brothers as well. Banking, at least from the outset, seems like a very male-dominated industry, right? But we were having a chat a few days ago in the prep to this, and you were like, Matt, no, it's not. Is it not?
Well, I've heard that expression many times. You're working in a male-dominant industry, and I wouldn't say so, because I think it's within banking as well. It is very different in the different business areas you're in. So, for instance, personal banking, very much you will see a gender equality, but also in general quite diverse number of employees, because probably it's reflecting the market. We're working for people, but also because it's about taking care of the family. And very much many female leaders you will find in personal banking, reflecting on taking care of the family and the family finances. While, what we hear elsewhere is that it's the male that has that role at home. But those who enjoy it come to banking and work in personal banking. And then, maybe more the traditional male-dominated areas is typically markets or large corporates and that side of it. But it's getting better, I think. Yeah.
Because, obviously, banking, obviously, in the 80s and things like that was very male-dominated, at least it seems so. But I'm seeing that increasingly so, initiatives set up in different organizations. And obviously, towards the end of this podcast, we'll chat a little bit more about diversity and that progression. But coming back to your progression in that industry, so, you didn't start out in personal, in life insurance initially, did you? You started out in HR, was it? That's where you were sort of progressing through Nordea.
Yeah, well, my first role was actually being a private economist, which is, as a macroeconomist, you're talking to the media, and I was the private economist that was talking to media about how to save and what to do. So that was 2 years of media training, I would say, very useful afterwards. Then I was asked to take on the role as head of HR in Norway, HR director, as we call it. And yeah, probably the toughest period of my life, the toughest role I've had. I was 30. I had 2 small children. I remember it was Gunn Wærsted who recruited me. I was in maternity leave, and we were living in London when I was having my second child. And she was calling, and I was so nervous for that interview. But, you're so stressed with small children. You're quite young yourself, and then taking upon such a huge role. And definitely when you step into that role, you realize also what it entails, and it's so much bigger than it's seen from the outside. So you have the negotiations with the unions, you have the ethic committee, you're the hire and fire of people. We had, some serious incidents. So it's everything, but you really you learn how an organization is working, but you also learn what is your ethical compass, which is probably the most important thing to utilize in that role. So a very interesting role, very challenging. I would recommend everyone to take it on as one part of their career, because it's good learning to have in different roles afterwards. Yeah.
Because we're seeing that more and more in the technology industry, which the startup, quote unquote, technology industry tends to be somewhat of the most explorative in HR, in different areas of business operations, because obviously these industries, these companies tend to sort of be the most innovative. So they're the ones who are like, well, if we're going to do something different, let's do everything different, right? And they were the first, for example, Google, I think it was in the early 2000s, was the first company to start to have almost insist that teams would sit and have lunch together. They'd have dedicated time to sit and have lunch together. Do you know why that was?
No.
Because families eat together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, how nice is that, right?
Yeah.
And I've also heard that also, to echo your point there about working in HR and understanding that, because HR is now, that industry's changed too. It used to be human relations. What does that mean, right? Recruitment and things like that. Now it encompasses. I've had a friend of mine who's got a job recently as the chief people officer.
Yeah.
In a high growth, venture funded startup, and the purpose of that role really is to understand, okay, how can we formulate teams, cross pollinate ideas? How can that his job is dedicated to understand how can I make everyone's life here better, individually, as teams, and collectively as a company. And I think he's almost in an unfireable role, because his role is so important to sort of understand how an organization works and is intertwined.
And it's a little bit like IT as well. When you are in HR or IT or any staff function, you tend to get only the bad news up on your desk. Yeah. So, you don't get the good news as you probably get in sales. So that is also a reflection, when you are sitting in one of the other roles, remember to give some of these people the good news as well, so they, can keep up the energy and motivation.
I want to come back to your role as a leader, and asking that question I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. if your friends, if I'd asked your friends 20, 25 years ago when you were, still at school, when you were in France at that school, and I said, oh yeah, Randy in 15, 20 years time will be the CEO of, the third largest life and pensions organization, would they say, yep, that makes total sense, or is that not true?
No, I don't think so. It hasn't been my goal, at least, and it hasn't been. I wasn't a true leader, standing out, taking the lead of a group or a group of friends or so. So, as I said, I was very timid. I was, standing a bit in the background. But I've always had some traits, or at least when I look at leaders today, I can recognize that I've always been curious. I've always been interested in learning, and also always challenging myself to learn. So and then I like to have a direction. So if no one else is setting that direction, I easily do it. And I think I'm quite a good people person as well. So that's, there's some things that at least I recognize in myself, and that I've also built more experience within. So that has led me to the roles I've taken.
In terms of leadership as an industry, I want to call leadership as an industry because I feel like it's becoming that. Obviously, a lot of people are aspiring to be leaders. Many of you listening to this are too. What are the most important leadership traits that you think a leader of today should have?
Well, I think, as I said, curiosity, probably the most important thing. Be curious and never end up sitting on the bench, always be on your toes to learn new stuff. And I think, some of your previous guests in this podcast have talked about building the foundation. I think, you should constantly build or renew your competence and experience. Make sure that you are always relevant as a leader. Just a reflection, my two teenagers are now, coding in maths in high school.
Wow.
And I didn't do that. So they're utilizing Python and things that, we utilize at work. It's just telling me how much more relevant I need to be in the next 5 or 10 years. So to keep relevant, be curious. Of course, you need to love people. You need to also have some sort of structure, because it is a lot of complexity, of course, depending on which role you take. But most of the leadership roles are very complex. You need to take quick decisions. You need to be good at the processes so people feel they have been treated well. Yes, you need to be a good people leader. And, that doesn't mean that you cannot lay off people, but you need to do it in a good manner with a good process. The combination of being curious and making sure you're on your toes, understanding the environment you're in, I think is really key. And to be a person that really likes people and likes to develop people, I would say. So if you like to learn yourself, you're also curious to get the people around you to grow and to learn more. I think that's important in a leadership role, or in a leader in general. Yeah.
Have you ever had self-doubt?
What does that mean?
Do you ever doubt yourself?
Oh yeah, absolutely, all the time. Coming here today. Today was a combination of two things. I'm, doing this. My son has his tooth that he needs to take out. And I'm going to record for Dagsrevyen afterwards on a quite tricky topic. So waking up this morning I wasn't saying, go girl, you can do this. I was saying, shit, how is this going to go? Both because my heart is breaking for my son. I wasn't that afraid to talk to you, Matt, but still you wanna at least remember to put in some wise words, and then this interview I do afterwards. So yes, I do have self-doubts continuously, I would say, but I'm making sure that it's not eating myself up. It's becoming. I'm quite good at also saying, look at this, you've achieved these things, you've actually done this and this, or you have affected that, you have managed to develop this person, or to give myself also a pat on the back.
And how do you overcome these kind of things? Do you have a mantra, like you said, do you wake up in the morning and go, go girl? Is that something you always do every morning? Look at yourself in the mirror and go, you can do it, you got it?
Yeah, sometimes my husband does it, my children does it. Or I'll sometimes also, because these 6 months that I've been now in my new role have been quite tough. It's we have some really heavy projects going on and so forth. So I actually had my PLD, my chat with my manager last Friday, and she said, "You seem so concerned, Randy, these 6 months. I don't recognize you being so concerned." And I said to her, well, because I really feel the responsibility, but I also know coming into 2021 with the new team in place, with the plan in place, we will tackle whatever it's coming. And I also utilize just a small technique to write down to myself sometimes, these are the achievements. Remember to also look at the achievements. So I think it's a combination of I'm always looking for improvements. What can I do best next time? What can we deliver now? So it's maybe not my strongest point to stop and reflect on what one has achieved. But I'm trying to get people around me at least to recognize and to try to help me do that, because it's also important for the people that's working with you.
Yeah, because I think it's so important to have a safe spot. As you mentioned before, a safe spot, finding a home base. In the world of meditation, now I'm not trying to push meditation on everyone because I'm struggling. I'm trying so hard. I mentioned this before on other episodes. If anyone can help me with that, I really appreciate it. But meditation tries to teach you to take a step back and just and it's called your home base, right? It's basically where you find the safe spots. And metaphorically speaking, it's simply just it can be playing golf. It can be, I don't know, drinking a coffee and looking out the window to Akebrygge or something. Wherever you're based, finding a safe spot in life. What is your safe spot in life? Where is that place? What is your home base?
Well, my safe spot is my family. So, and I really feel safe and. Yeah, that's my safe spot. I have my husband that I met when I was 18, and we're still together.
Oh, that's lovely.
And two really great children, and we're really, we're doing stuff together, which makes it quite nice. We love doing wave surfing, for instance. So the whole family is traveling around in different places to do wave surfing. So that safe spot makes it also easier for me to take risks when it comes to work life. Not risks as in business risk, but more take a chance. So take up on a new role or a new task, and also to say, to have courage in that role, because whatever, if I end up being sacked or we are failing, I still have my family, which is the most important thing. And I've learned throughout the years, as you said, when I was 20, I worked, around the clock, I would say. But coming up to the 30 years, finding that balance, trying to balance life and, family life and work. I've been quite good at that. And I've been quite good at also, not working during Saturdays or, during the weekend. And definitely during holidays, I turn the computer totally off. And even my brain, I can turn it off, totally relaxing. That I have that balance, because then that safe spot is also meaning something to me. So it's such a big part of my life that, okay, then I can have if everything fails, I still have a good life with a good family and some good activities. And then I can go out and try something else. So I think, you're onto something that has definitely made me more courageous, I would say, at work.
Have a safe spot, and then the world is your oyster, I guess. I mean, as to be as corny or cliche as I can. But what has been your greatest or your best investment in yourself?
I would say before getting kids, it was to take half a year in Barcelona. some time off. I also traveled a bit, worked in Brussels. That was a good investment to discover the world and to try out different things. After that, I would say, just having this balance. I would say again, making sure that you are a full person. Not too skewed towards one or another thing, which has, for me at least, given both the safe spot but also some confidence and also making sure that I take the full out of life. Life is so much more than just work, but it's also having an exciting work or job. So yeah.
And that's what Mats Johansson said from Akerbye Marine in a former podcast, which will be coming out soon. He makes a very interesting point about how they in their company focus very strongly on making everyone, friends with who they work with, creating an environment that allows friendships to be established. Because I for one, can say that when I first moved to Norway 4 years ago, I was working for an organization called Angel Challenge, which is similar to, they've done some things with Sheet Invest. Obviously, this podcast is sponsored by and brought to you by the Sheet community. And Sheet Invest is an initiative which sort of trains and educates women and men too about how to become better investors and invest in, change that I think there's a massive asset imbalance in the world. Men own, I forget the exact figure, 85% of the world's assets versus women who own 15%. I think it might even be smaller, the number actually. But I became very good friends with the people I worked with, and to this day I am. And from that amazing experience I had for those 2 years in that company, and that was one thing. But I actually gained friendships for life from that environment. And I remember when I was working, and we had difficult things to overcome. And you're a salaried individual, right? There's no obligation for you to work after 4 or 5 in Norway, right? But you wanted to, because you weren't just working for the common goal of the company. I was working for my colleagues because I didn't want to let them down. I wanted to make their lives better and easier for them. So I think, having friends at work has never been more important than it is today, especially in the world we live in, where we all are sitting in bedrooms or hopefully in not too many sofas, finding that balance. Randy, moving into your advice, you've given a lot of really golden pieces here, and I'll sum up a few things at the end of this. But to our audience listening, hey, you listening, let's see what Randy can come up with. What's your advice to people listening today in taking a step towards leadership? And what step would you take today if you were trying to become a leader in your 20s again?
I would find myself a good leader and probably take the elevator up with she or he. So, having a good leader is number one. And I've always put that up front first. Is this a person I am connecting with? Is this a person I truly feel is genuine and that will develop me, give me the opportunities, but also support me? Do we have a good dialogue? Do I believe in his or her purpose? That type of stuff. So that is probably the first. And then the second is stay alert on the environment. So what's happening among customers, society, the market you're operating in, the industry, competition. Stay awake of what's happening out there. And remember that every company has a customer, and it's all down to what the customer wants or needs, or want to pay for. So make sure that you remember that anywhere where we are in a company or in an organization. Remember the customer.
I love that. Remember the customer. Be awake. Be alert. That's so true. I think not enough of us monitor what's happening in the industry. We work in, say, finance. What is happening in banking industry? Obviously, we can get very sidetracked. I'm very guilty of that too. In my own little world, I have my, my fence posts up, and I'm laser line focused on what I'm doing in front of me. Sometimes we just need to take that step back and go, hey, actually, what's happening around me? Because then you might see the opportunity. Who knows? You might be able to suggest a new strategy, a new path for your current setup. You don't have to necessarily change where you work and what you do, but you can actually have a greater influence on what's around you.
Yeah, and I think, I spoke to Askeladden, them who's starting up all these lovely companies, and they really, put it down to simple things, fix the basics for the customers, make sure that you see what's needed. And sometimes I think we are doing it way too complicated in incumbents like banking and other industries. So coming back to what's really important for the customer and make sure you focus on that, then you will always, and stay close to the customer, then you will be relevant for your future leaders and for future positions.
I think it's very well said. And Askeladden is a great organization based in Oslo, and I think they just set up an office in Bergen now. They're the team behind Cutters and Dig, the new pizza place, and a bunch of other really cool companies, so check them out if you haven't already. Randy, what is equality to you?
I think it's two things. One is obviously having everybody should have the same opportunity, independent of who you are, and you should have the full opportunity to live your life. That's one. And then it's the second one, which, how we as a society benefit from the full potential of all the talents and all the flavors out there. So, yeah, those two things I would say.
Because gender diverse companies, as they say, are 15% more likely to outperform their respective national industry mediums and averages. And I've got just a stream of statistics about female-led teams obviously tend to outperform. We've got the data behind this, right? Obviously, you are a female leading a team in a large organization with 32,000 employees, largest banking group in the Nordics, I think, Nordea. What is your advice to other leaders out there, other CEOs, other managers, male or female, about how to, because She Community exists. The sole purpose of She Community that exists, the sponsor of this podcast, the owner of this podcast, Heidi Arvin and her great team, to reduce the gender economic gap. Which currently stands at 256 years. I say it in every single episode because I want to reiterate the point and how ludicrous that figure is. I mean, it's unfathomable. That's not even in my children's lifetime. It's unbelievable. When we'll finally reach gender economic equality, which is, just crazy. What is your advice to other leaders out there, from your experience as a female leader, having worked with others to include diversity in the workplace better?
Well, it's again coming back to the leaders you have. So are they truly interested and generally believe that diversity will bring business? Because it has to bring, it has to develop your business. And I truly believe it does, So either it's both gender, but also backgrounds. I need diversity to get creativity, to get innovation, to get all the discussions up on the table, and then to be able to take a good decision. And again, to reflect the customer base we have. So, especially in personal banking, but I think in all industries, our customers are diverse. You need to reflect their needs. So you have to have leaders who, and the board members that generally believes that is one of the drivers to develop the business. And then it will come naturally. You can, of course, do structural things, say that you should always have a female in the end of the interviews if you're hiring for a position, or, you can have those types of things. But again, it is which leaders you're putting into the organization that's driving and generally believing in it. Yeah. I've seen we've failed because we've had leaders who don't, have that passion for it, but we have all the structure. And then I've seen we've succeeded where we have the leader, but we haven't had the structure. So again, and I don't think you need to look for the numbers. I was mentoring a super cool girl who's a fund manager now, who's managing one of the largest funds we have, where you're following companies with only gender equality and looking at their performance. So you can put money in her fund, but so you can calculate yourself way and back and forth. But I think it's really hard to not agree on that. The customer base is diverse, and for you to be able to bring forward your products or services to these customers, you need to reflect that. And and especially to take out all the opportunities that are there in the market.
I think that's really well said, Randy. Your customer base is diverse. You should be a reflection of that, right? How can you deliver or cater to a diverse customer base if you don't understand their needs, if you don't understand their problems, if you don't just understand them as individuals, right? Beautiful comment on diversity and how to include that in the workplace. Randy, I love to sum things up. This has been a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much for sharing this with our lovely audience. I'm just going to sum it up because I love to sum it up, and I'm going to stare at the camera now while I do that. So, a few notes that I scribbled down. Now, I'm a terrible handwriter, so I can barely read my own writing sometimes. But how to activate people is something that is so important in being a leader. You need to understand how to activate people, the hunters, the people who are passionate about specific things. Be curious, be a people person. You need to be a people person. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be the best person in the room at being a people person, the most extroverted, the most charismatic or whatever it is, but you have to be interested in people and have an interest in their interests and understand their interests and have direction. You need to understand, be alert, be awake, understand what's happening around you in your industry and in your role, in your team even. When was the last time you asked your team members about their family? Do you know about their family? How many brothers and sisters do they have? I feel like that's something that's sometimes, overlooked in the workplace. We're there, we have conversations over the coffee. It might be surface level. So I urge you all listening and watching this to do that. Find a good leader and follow them. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? Ride on the coattails of someone else, and then when they step out, you're in the limelight, and it's your chance to shine. Finding a great leader is a really good strategy to become a good leader. And I have a great mentor. If you don't have a mentor, I believe She community has the She Mentor Network. I believe, Randy, you're even part of that. So who knows? Maybe Randy can be your mentor. Randy, thank you so much for joining us on Breakfast with the CEO, brought to you by the She community. Have a wonderful day, Randy. Good luck with your interview after this. I hope it is as hopefully enjoyable and painless as this was.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Yeah. And have a wonderful day, everyone, wherever you are and wherever you're listening to this. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And if you're listening to this after that, have a great 2021. Let's hope it's better than 2020. Cheers.
Yeah, it will be. It will be.